The following information refers to the enrollment by ethnic group at a mythical university. 80 Italians were enrolled in algebra, 100 Germans were enrolled in algebra, 90 Central Africans were enrolled in algebra. Geometry has 50 Italians, 85 Central Africans, and 110 Germans. Can you make a nice shorthand way of listing the data? So, there are lots of ways, I guess, of thinking of this. You could just list it. You could say, 80 Italians in algebra, and then you could keep listing it. You could list it basically the way it's there, except for maybe break up the other one. You could also start to list it by, the way the last one did. It says, for geometry, we have 50 Italians, 85 Central Africans, 110 Germans. And then for algebra, we have 100 Germans, 90 Central Africans, and 80 Italians. But again, this isn't so neat because it's still hard to scan to see what's going on. There are tools that kind of help from a practical standpoint. If you're familiar with Microsoft Excel, this is one way to think. I could think of it like, okay, I have algebra and I have geometry, and here I have the Italians, the Central Africans, and the Germans. And so I can now put this data in rows and columns. Maybe put a little border around it to clean it up a bit. And now I can fill in my information here. I have 80, 100, and 90. Or 80, 90, and 100. And I have 50, 85, and 110. 50, 85, and 110. Or you could have decided you wanted to organize it the other way, where you have algebra and geometry here. You have Italians, Central Africans here, and then Germans there. And you could have pivoted it and made it look like this, so that you have 80, 90, 100, 50, 85, 110. And so at least this you can scan now. I can say, how many Central Africans are taking geometry. Another thing to think about is you might want total columns as you create these things. This is a little divergent from what the general idea of this problem is, which I'll get to in a second. But you can do a sum formula and just add them up. You can also sum down to see how many Germans there are, and now you don't necessarily, or how many geometry students there are. Right, and so this can tell you a lot of information. What I was looking to do, this was just to pique your interest to see what kinds of things you thought about. One way I wanted to show you is the idea of matrix. Now here's a way to think of it. So you could think of it, it's just like rows and columns. Right? In fact, we do call them rows and columns. And so we're going to have, we could either have algebra and geometry over here, which means we would have 2 rows, and we'd need 3 columns. Or you could have it where you have 3 rows and 2 columns. And the order, by the way, doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So these aren't equivalent. These are equivalent, but they're not equal matrices. So in this case, I have a spot here, 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 and here. Whereas this one I have 1, 2, 3. Right. So you'll notice one is pivot of the other. This has 3 rows by 2 columns. Or sorry, this has 2 rows by 3 columns. This has 3 rows by 2 columns. This is 3 by 2. This is 2 by 3. So these are structurally different, although they are similar things that provide similar information. So 80 Italians in algebra, 90 Central Africans, 100 Germans, 50, 85, 110, versus the down orientation, much like we had in our spreadsheet, different orientations. There's also no summative column. This just holds the raw data. So you can make a clear shorthand way to organize this, and we don't even list the rows and columns here anymore. And in fact, the boxes don't even exist. We just list it like, almost got it clean, like that. So this would be a matrices, matrix, M-A-T-R-I-X, or multiple matrix, we call matrices. And it's a structured way of holding data that we can then use to manipulate it, which we'll learn a lot about later.